The first light over the Alps bled rose gold across snow crowns, before sliding down into rugged foothills where thousands of Gaesatae warriors stamped their bare feet against the morning chill. Spear points winked like frost on pine needles. Horned helmets caught the sun's earliest blaze. Among the tumult moved two figures draped not in fur, but in the electric confidence of kingship: Concolitanus, broad as a bear, and painted head to toe in woad spirals, and Aneroëstes, hawk-eyed, speaking softly, yet carrying a voice that could crack the hush of a valley. They had crossed these mountains for plunder, yes, but more for legend, for the chance to carve Gallic thunder into the stone annals of Rome herself. Far south in the forum's echoing corridors, news of the incursion vibrated like a distant drum. Merchants paused mid-barter, senators whispered above tablets, mothers clutched children when rumors of naked northern giants reached their ears. Yet inside the Curia Hostilia, fear tempered into iron resolve. Two consuls, Gaius Atilius Regulus, gray-templed yet unbowed, and Lucius Aemilius Papus, younger but already seasoned by Etruscan dust, were vested with twin imperia. Their oaths to Jupiter Optimus Maximus tasted of salt and bronze. Rome would stand unburned. Her farmsteads would not echo with barbarian victory songs. Regulus, commanding the fleet at Sardinia, received Papus's urgent dispatch sealed in wax, the color of dried blood. Without hesitation, he ordered sails unfurled, trusting favorable Tyrrhenian winds to carry him to the mainland before Gallic spearheads pierced its heart. Meanwhile, Papus gathered legions at Ariminum, summoning veterans who had chased Piraeus back to Epirus and green recruits whose armor still smelled of oil and fear. Standard-bearers raised scarlet vexilla. The silver wolf of Legio II glinted over fresh shields. Along the Via Flaminia they marched, a steady thunder of hobnails that rattled door hinges in distant villages. The Gauls, unburdened by siege trains or heavy baggage, surged into the Po Valley with the violence of spring floods. Blossoming orchards became bivouacs. Wheat fields bowed under the crush of chariot wheels. Concolitanus let his warriors loot lightly, preferring speed over spoils. But Aneroëstes counseled cunning, bleed the Romans of morale before meeting them in open field. So they set a trap at Faesulae, feigning retreat to draw Papus into a ravine fringed by cypress. The ambush erupted in shrieks and slashing iron, felling two cohorts before noon. Yet Papus salvaged discipline from chaos, forming a defensive orb that blunted Gallic fury until night cloaked both wounds and shame. Word of the setback jolted Regulus as his triremes kissed the harbor at Pisae. He disembarked with 20,000 fresh troops, their faces sunburnt from salt spray, but spirits blazing. Farmers along the Etrurian coast watched, jaws slack, as a river of segmented armor flowed inland. Two Roman armies now straining to converge like blades of a closing scissor. Between them, the Gauls realized too late, lay Telamon, a hill-crowned plain where destiny waited in ambush of its own. Telamon's twin ridges resembled a god's cupped hands, palms up to the sky. Wheat bent in silent prayer, while poppies fluttered red as severed arteries. Papus reached the southern rise first, arranging his infantry into the classic triple line. Hastati forward, Principes behind, veteran Triarii anchoring the rear like granite. Across the undulating ground, he saw dust plumes swirling from Regulus's approach at the northern ridge. Between those plumes and his own standards writhed the Celtic horde, caught unawares, their chariots still clustered around wagons laden with Italian wine stolen from terrified vineyards. Concolitanus answered a predicament with bravado. He roared for his warriors to face both ways, half to the north against Regulus's advance, half to the south against Papus's silent ranks. The Gaesatae kings positioned themselves where the battle would burn hottest. Concolitanus opposite Regulus, Aneroëstes facing Papus, each resolved to crack a consul like an egg and feast on imperial yoke. Regulus seized initiative. He ordered skirmishers forward, velites with wolf-skin caps, whose javelins whistled through the dawn air. The missiles hammered Celtic shields or found naked flesh. For many, Gaesatae fought unclothed to prove contempt for Roman steel. Blood beaded on painted torsos, yet the warriors only screamed louder, rattling bronze neck torques, thumping swords on shields in a rhythm that shook migrating starlings from olive groves. Then Regulus advanced the hastati downhill. Iron clashed with iron in a cataclysm of sparks. At the first collision, Regulus himself, ever the soldier's consul, plunged into melee. Legend says a Celtic spear pierced his left thigh, yet he fought on until his sword arm grew too heavy, and death snatched him amid a ring of slain foes. His fall, far from breaking Roman resolve, ignited it. Northern Ridge legionaries shouted his name like a war trumpet, pressing forward to avenge the consul who had crossed an ocean to protect them. Across the field, Papus watched standards dip on the opposite ridge and knew Regulus had perished. Grief he folded like parchment and tucked deep. Raising his arm, he unleashed the southern hastati in perfect synchrony. Now the Gauls felt war close behind them as well as before. Shields pivoted, formations frayed. Slaughter threatened to become panic. Aneroëstes recognized the noose tightening. He spurred charioteers into the Roman right, wheels scything across fallen velites. Yet the legion's disciplined maniples flexed and absorbed, locking shields to form a bristling wall. Pilum shafts crashed, bending on Celtic shields or punching through linen-bound wood to pin arms unusable. Gauls dropped encumbering boards and fought two-handed with spathae, but Roman short swords, gladii glinting like lightning, stabbed upward into unguarded ribs. Concolitanus, spotting a weak seam where Regulus's dead cohort created a gap, personally led a wedge of spear-throwing nobles. They broke through the first rank howling triumph, only to find the principes waiting with heavier armor and calmer eyes. Javelins dropped, swords rose. The wedge disintegrated like surf against basalt. Concolitanus himself lost balance on a pile of bodies. A legionary Pugio found his throat. Blood steamed on the hill grass, and the king's last sight was the Roman eagle, carried unstained above the fray. With their champion fallen, the northern Celtic line sagged. Regulus's successor, Tribune Marcus Antonius, ordered cavalry to punch through. Equites in plumed helmets thundered downhill, lances poised. They collided with weary spearmen, exploded through, wheeled, and struck again. Each pass cleaved another ribbon of the horde. To the south, Papus committed his own cavalry as the sun climbed, smelting helmets into blinding mirrors. Aneroëstes fought with desperate brilliance, hearing perhaps the whisper of prophecy that only disaster lay ahead. Realizing collapse was inevitable, he signaled retreat to the western woods where escape remained possible. Some bands obeyed, streaming toward safety, but Papus loosed Numidian allies who harried the fugitives with javelins until the forest floor grew slick. The encirclement closed precisely at the noon hour, when the two Roman armies linked shields, transforming Telamon's plain into a slaughter pen. Surrounded, many Gauls fought on out of pride, some from terror, and a few, legend claims, from ecstasy of battle. Yet valor cannot defy geometry forever. By mid-afternoon, piles of the dead formed grotesque bulwarks. Roman soldiers fought uphill across corpses to reach fresh enemies. When horns finally called cessation, the field looked less like Tuscany and more like an open charnel. Historians recorded 40,000 Celtic dead, 10,000 captured. Among them, Concolitanus's headless corpse and near-catatonic Aneroëstes, who, unable to fathom defeat, later starved himself in prison. Roman losses numbered in the thousands but felt immeasurable beside the empty saddle of Regulus. Papus ordered a pyre worthy of 2 consuls, one for the fallen colleague, one for Telamon itself, where he pledged the Gauls' weapons to Mars Gradivus. The smoldering altar cast sparks into a violet dusk, each ember a promise that Rome's northern gates would stand inviolate. Yet victory bought more than security. It purchased ambition. The Senate, elated, decreed new colonies in Cisalpine Gaul, seeding Roman stone along rivers once wild with Celtic chants. Roads unfurled northward, each milestone stamped with SPQR, as if to rewrite geography in Latin letters. Merchants flooded markets with amber from the Baltic, furs from Helvetia, and iron circlets hammered from melted Gallic blades. A generation of legionaries who survived Telamon would later march under Scipio Africanus, their confidence tempered on this very field. In taverns from Ostia to Capua, storytellers embellished the clash. They spoke of blue-skinned giants who laughed at wounds, of a consul who died on foreign soil, yet whose valor became every legionary's lamp, of another who bore Rome's fate on his shoulders and emerged wreathed in laurel. They described the deafening clangor when 2 armies closed like thunderheads, and the abrupt stillness afterward, broken only by the weeping of Tuscan women gleaning through armor for lost kin. But perhaps the tale's heart lay in Telamon's silent hills themselves. Seasons passed, wheat returned, nourished by ancestral marrow. Shepherd boys found fragments of twisted iron sprouting among anemones and wondered whose hands once wielded them. At sunset, the ridges cast long shadows shaped uncannily like legion formations, as though the earth itself remembered marching feet. Travelers who rested there swore they heard faint battle cries on the wind, an echo of that July morning when courage, cunning, and cruelty braided into a single unbreakable cord called history. Telamon would never rival Cannae or Zama in textbooks. Yet, without it, Rome might have faced steel at her very gates, less prepared, less unified, less fiercely certain of destiny. In the blood-streaked fields outside a modest Etruscan town, the Republic tested the mettle of its citizen army against warriors who fought with unbridled fury and died singing songs none but they would ever understand. Rome endured, and, having endured, she began to believe her reach could extend far beyond the Apennines, across seas, across centuries. So the next time you stand before a triumphal arch, Or trace your finger along the curvature of the Colosseum's weathered blocks. Spare a thought for Telamon, for in its soil was sown the arrogance and the awe of an empire not yet born but already inevitable, forged on a day when naked Celts met disciplined legions under a Tuscan sun and the world tilted, ever so slightly, toward Rome.